Okay, Brad, I think we can get to the games. Now we have a Thursday night game.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's just start Thursday night. It's the AFC South matchup. I can't figure out what the hell's going on in the AFC South. Every time I think one team's going to run away with it, they lose, and they all come back
Yeah,
to the
I know.
pack.
I know.
I still think, by the way, that Tennessee might actually be my favorite team in the division with Tannehill at quarterback. They're now only one game behind both the Colts and the Houston Texans, and they have a potential to catch one of them because one of these teams is probably going to lose. I guess it could end in a tie, but I don't think it will. So you have Indianapolis, according to Bovada, +4 at Houston. Thursday night football. Let me reel off the injuries because Indianapolis has a lot. Marlon Mack is going to be out. He's out indefinitely with the hand injury. T.Y. Hilton's probably going to be out. I don't know about Paris Campbell. He was out last week. I doubt he's going to play on a Thursday night game on a short week. I'm not as familiar with what his injury is, so I apologize there. But yeah, I mean, basically, Indianapolis is losing a ton of skill players. But Brissett looked good coming off his MCL injury, I thought, last week. So there you go.
Can we just talk about real quick the pass interference call in the Ravens Texans game that wasn't called even when it was reviewed? That was the that was the worst one of the year. Come on.
It's getting worse and worse and worse. This officiating is garbage, especially with respect. The worst thing the NFL could have done is put more light on these non-call penalties because there have been non-call penalties for decades. Most famously, by the way, and you can't really even call it cheating because the officials let it happen. Michael Irvin, I should say, and I grew up a Redskins fan, so I hated this, and so like Michael Irvin is by far my least favorite player of all time. But the Irvin pioneered the push-off catch. That's what he did for his entire career. And again, you can't call it cheating because the officials let it happen game after game. But the worst thing you could do as the NFL is kind of overreact to that LA Rams New Orleans Saints debacle in the NFC Championship. And now everybody every week gets to see these plays reviewed, and not overturned. It's crazy. It's crazy and it
Absolutely
sucks.
crazy. That was the worst one so far. I mean, okay, you missed it in real time, sure, I get it. But then you go to the replay and you don't overturn it.
And it's been happening all year. All year.
It's maddening.
It
It's
happens
just
5 times a
maddening.
week. And now now the coaches don't even throw the flag a lot of times. They're just like, why am I going to lose a timeout? They're not going to overturn it. You know,
Right.
it's nuts. It almost reminds me of like the Major League Baseball when the because the official or the umpires there were so against instant replay when they first had it, they would never overturn anything in spite of having inconclusive evidence because they just didn't want to do it. It seems like the same kind of thing to me. At Riveron, it's garbage, and centralizing all of the replays to him. We've talked about it before, man. It's just he is just steaming garbage, man.
Terrible.
He's terrible.
Terrible.
Anyway, once again, Indianapolis +4, Brad, at Houston.
Indianapolis +4 at Houston. I got to go Houston on this bad boy to cover, man. I think they bounce back from the rough day in Baltimore.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I think here's where like analytics I think can fail. Again, we talk about this too, so I won't go too long into it. But the mental makeup, and there's one other game I'm going to talk about later on in the week. It's the second to last game we'll talk about, the Sunday night game this week. But there's an once a team gets handled, and Houston was handled. I don't want to say embarrassed because Baltimore's really good. Houston, sometimes like we saw with the Packers versus the Chargers a couple weeks ago, sometimes you just don't have it. Sometimes you don't have the juice, right? And so I try not to overreact. I know you don't either. But when a team does get handled, they get motivated to come out and say, oh, no, not again. So I would say, Indianapolis, I actually called Houston 23, Indianapolis 20 because I do like this Colts defense. So +4, that would take me to the Colts. My analytics all like the Colts in this game. But I'm with you, Brad. Like it's hard to bet against Houston to come back. This is a huge game at home against this is a huge game for huge playoff implications at this point. Suddenly we're in week 12 of the NFL season. I believe they're both 6-4 coming to this game. They need this game. Both teams need this game. So
yeah, big time.
Yeah, so I'm with you. I think Houston I think Houston is is tough. My computer's like Indianapolis. I liked Indianapolis, but I like your argument, man. Mentally, I think Houston's going to come out. Watson's going to have one of his best games of the season. I do think Will Fuller is a big deal. So him being out, I think, hurt them quite a bit against Baltimore. They needed him to stretch the defense. Not that I think Houston could have pulled off the game based on how bad that beatdown was, but I do look forward to Houston coming back because Kenny Stills just isn't doing it for Houston. But fantasy-wise, real quick, I do like both quarterbacks in this game. I think they're both starts. I think Jonathan Williams filling in for Marlon Mack will be good. I do think that Nyheim Hines will actually outplay his projections, so I think he's a borderline start, especially in a PPR league. We'll see what happens and shakes out at wide receiver. I guess Zach Pascal would be a start, but let's check the injury report getting close to it. Doyle was a big disappointment last week, so I'm trusting Ebron now and not Doyle until I hear otherwise. For Houston, I like Carlos Hyde this week. I didn't last week. I do this week. Don't love Duke Johnson. DeAndre Hopkins I like. Hopefully they can get him some support, but I like Darren Fells to get back in the end zone.